And some of you guys might not like what I have to say, but it has to be said. Hey guys, it's your girl Cameron, and I'm back at it again with another video. And today we are going to be talking about what makes someone a legend. Do we throw the word or use the term way too loosely when referring to some of our favorite artists?
Hell to the yeah.
I think all of us can agree that, you know, a lot of people be calling all types of people legends and icons, and there's a lot of arguments about specific artists. And rather than coming to you guys today and discussing like who's better than who and yada yada yada, we can always get into that another video. I wanted to talk about what is the basis of this, like how does someone become a legend, what in my opinion I believe are the factors that make you a legend. And some of you guys might not like what I have to say, but it has to be said. So yeah, comment down below, let me know what you guys think. Do you agree, disagree with some of the things that I say? Are there any people who you would consider legends that you don't think deserves the credit or gets the credit they deserve? And please hit that subscribe button down below. You already know what's up. Thank you guys so much for watching. And without further ado, let's just get straight into the conversation. Let's go. Guys, don't mind my messy bed. I really didn't feel like doing the most, so sorry. Kind of a basis, what got me thinking is I've noticed that, and I'm not commenting saying who I think is a legend, who is not when I'm talking about this, but I've noticed recently we've had several rappers in particular who have passed away, rest in peace, and a lot of the times I see a lot of debate coming up about, you know, rest in peace to a legend, a legend, a legend. And some of these young men, I mean, they weren't even really for real in the game for more than 5 years. Some, I'm not naming names, I'm not saying anything about anyone in particular, but there's been a lot of debate. A lot of people find it disrespectful if somebody says that comment and you say, no, they're not a legend. And there's a lot of questions, I think, behind what that even means, right? So we also have debates about a lot of people saying, is Chris Brown a legend? Is he the GOAT?
This is not okay. This needs to stop now.
People try to put him in the same hemisphere and conversation as a Michael Jackson or Beyonce. There's very heavy debate about that one. There's a lot of heavy debate about Drake. So rather than trying to pick apart who's what, who's when, why, where, what, because everybody, it's kind of subjective. I kind of disagree with the subjectivity of a legend. However, it is in a sense, right? A lot of us don't know the entire discographies of a lot of these artists, so it's really hard to like have a very informed opinion. But I do want to talk about breaking down what this is. So who do we consider a legend? So who are some names that we can all kind of agree upon has legendary status? Michael Jackson, Prince, Whitney Houston, Madonna, Mariah Carey, some say Janet Jackson, Tupac, Stevie Wonder, James Brown, Aretha Franklin, Biggie, Jay-Z, definitely Beyonce, and some people that I personally didn't really listen to much: Elton John, Mick Jagger, Elvis Presley, Paul McCartney, the Beatles, yada yada yada. These are some names that'll come up if you search up a top 10 list of legends, top 20, top 50. You will 9 times out of 10 see any of these people's names that I listed. I have basically 4 factors as to what I think makes somebody a legend. I've thought long and hard about this. The first thing that I think is one of the most important, this is key, longevity is important in determining a legend. Do I believe that you can have an iconic moment in your career and have not been out for a while? Yes. However, most of these people that I've listed, a lot of them have had an everlasting impact and longevity. I'm not saying all of these people have. Some people's lives have been cut short. If you look at somebody, for instance, like a Michael Jackson, he's one of the best examples of that. Was popping in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and remained legendary in the 2000s. And he went from being a child to being in a group, right? To having his own solo career. There's so many times he could have failed, but he didn't. He's probably going to be used as an example for every single point that I am making. Another person, Mariah Carey. As much as people clown her and say she can't sing.
It's false. No way. Not this time. It's a made-up tale. It's a total fabrication. It's fiction. It's an urban legend that never happened.
Her albums are still recharting till this day. E = MC² just hit the charts like last week. Singles rising, like it's crazy. Like her old albums are still hitting the charts. She's the queen of Christmas, guys. The queen of Christmas. And her music is forever being played. And it's timeless. In my opinion, I feel like you have to be in the business for a while, for a minute. That's one really specific way. It's not the only way, but I think that is so important. And I think that's what gets clouded when we're talking about today, like a lot of our artists today.
Who's a legend?
So the second thing that's important to me is impact. And when I mean impact, it's cute to have your little fans and all that stuff, you know what I mean? But impact in terms of how wide was your impact? Some people argue with some of their favorite artists.
Well, they impacted my life. They saved my life. That's legend.
Like, it's not about you. As an individual listener, that's awesome. But what impact did they have on the culture, on music, on the world? For instance, if you go on any legendary list, the Beatles are always #1. Come for me. But I have maybe heard one Beatles song in my life, right? To me, I was like, in my opinion, I personally felt like Michael Jackson should take the #1 spot, point blank period. But I also acknowledged at the same time, when we're talking about somebody like the Beatles, it's not about me. Just because I hadn't heard a Beatles song or didn't really listen to them, I saw people like Nirvana, AC/DC, a lot of rock bands that I was like, I think this is a little biased. But I was like, I cannot take that away from them because their impact is greater than just me as a person, right? As a listener. So you have to look at the overall picture. Just because you don't know somebody doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have a large impact, because you might not listen to that type of music. We're talking about impact as well. You have to talk about in terms of record sales. That's very important, guys. As a musician, record sales, unfortunately, is everything. Record sales. What did you do for the culture? Your streams. Today we have streaming platforms such as Spotify. You have Apple Music. You can stream everything off of your phone. Awards and accolades. That can be excused sometimes because they be on some BS at the Grammys. So I'm not even saying that that's necessarily the standard, because a lot of talented artists have been gypped from Grammys. And also your discography. A small area, but artists who branch out from just music, right? You have somebody like Michael Jackson, Diana Ross, who did The Wiz. Michael has done some other films. Mariah Carey in Glitter. She was even in Precious. You got Beyonce, who has been in several movies. You have Tupac, who was getting into acting. Even Aaliyah was getting into acting. So you look at people like that. I'm not saying that some of these films were blockbuster films. They're taking their talent and expanding and taking it and having a play on the culture. You look at Whitney Houston with Bodyguard and the iconic music, the legendary music she made for that movie. That, I think, elevated her career like no other. And I even think of impact in terms of artists who have passed on. If you look at Tupac, if you look at Biggie, at least they have a huge influence on hip-hop culture and a lot of the artists that we consider legendary today. If you look at Aaliyah, her music is still very relevant, right? We still talk about Aaliyah's style. We still talk about her music. We still talk about her presence. And Selena Quintanilla. Some people, you know, watching might not listen to Spanish, Latin music, but love her music. And till this day, she lives on. And Selena's like a perfect example of someone I said the impact is bigger than just you. She is very, very, very important in Latin music, very important to Mexican culture, Latinos period, and people period. Like Black people, we love Selena Quintanilla. So there's people who their legacies live on today, and I feel like that's so important in terms of impact. Third thing, what are they bringing to the table that is different or unique? What is it something we have not seen? What is setting them apart from the crowd? We see a lot of carbon copies a lot nowadays, or people who heavily take inspiration to the point of where it's almost kind of copying from certain artists, and that doesn't make them any less of an artist. We all take inspiration, some people more than others, but you have to think about what is somebody doing that has not been done before or has not been done in the way that they are doing it. Michael Jackson, again, if you think about somebody like Usher, takes great inspiration from Michael Jackson. Neo, you look at Chris Brown, all have used openly and willingly and admittingly Michael Jackson aesthetic, movement. That's not taking away from their talent by any means. But yeah, you also have to make your own space, your own lane, and doing something different than maybe what the general public has seen before. And I think that's something that's highly underrated. Fourth, performance. Performance is a huge part, at least when I'm talking about and looking at people who we consider legendary. It depends on the style of music 100%, but we think about how do they connect with the crowd? I think a huge part of being an artist and really elevating to the next level is that performance area. What type of performer are they? Are they a great vocal performer? Can they sing? Can they dance? Right? Mariah Carey is somebody who has kind of gotten away with not being able to dance as much. She's a legendary performer, especially back in her day, because she could sing. You look at somebody like Beyonce, who can do both. She can sing and she can dance simultaneously at the same time. You look at a Michael Jackson who can sing and dance, but just the whole mix was just legendary and iconic and just invigorating and vibrant, and it made people were passing out. You had to pull people out on stretchers. Also something that's highly underrated now is a lot of people just lip sync today. And I honestly feel like if you do that live, especially a lot of the time, we said longevity, impact, uniqueness, differences, and performance as our four. I think if you are a pioneer in a sense, a lot of those artists were opening doors for Black people, and in that self, that is kind of legendary in a sense. Like, we today are not fighting as many barriers in the music industry in the same sense that, you know, some of our ancestors and people were in the past. And fighting those struggles and being able to be as good as they were, I think it's kind of a different comparison, a different precedent. But Michael Jackson was, correct me if I'm wrong, the first Black person to be played on MTV. MTV was the staple, like anything that's hot is on MTV. First Black person played on MTV, I want to say, with Billie Jean. I will correct myself if I'm wrong in editing. But a lot of artists today don't have to break a barrier like that. That in itself is legendary. Like, that action in itself. If you look at somebody like Madonna, I've never really gotten as much into Madonna, but I do know that when she came out, she was really trying it. She was pushing boundaries.
I don't like that.
She was turning heads. She was creating conversation. She was doing things that had never been done before. That in itself is legendary. But common debates for artists nowadays include Chris Brown, Drake, Lil Wayne. Some people feel like that's not a debate. I'm just putting that in there. Kanye, Beyonce. Some people say Rihanna. Lady Gaga, Katy Perry. The reason why I say they're common debates is because some of these artists, some people may argue that they haven't put in enough time. I'm not saying anything. In the future, like if we look at them a little later on, maybe an Ariana Grande, Taylor Swift. I don't have the knowledge to speak on several of these artists, so I'm not even going to do that. But some of these artists, we have to kind of see it's a test of time. I think it's safe to say Beyonce is. Beyonce has been around since the 90s, and it's 2020. You see what I'm saying? A lot of the girls aren't doing numbers like that. Lady Gaga's not there yet. Katy Perry's not there yet. Katy Perry kind of fell off. I think Nicki Minaj, even though she's put in 10 plus years, I think it's safe to say that she could deserve her legendary status. Also based on her talent, but the fact that she was holding the rap game down, especially for the women, for that long. That in itself is legendary. So that's kind of all I wanted to say about that topic, because yes, it's harmless to call somebody a legend who we all know is not. It's really harmless. But if you're passionate about music, it gets a little frustrating when people are just throwing the legend word around, because artists work really hard, and a lot of people who we do consider legends put years and years and decades into the business. You know, there's a respect level. You can't really just throw that word around here. Please hit that subscribe button down below. You already know the drill. So peace out. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.